I recognize the right and duty of this generation to develop and use the natural resources of our land, but I do not recognize the right to waste them or to rob by wasteful use the generations that come after us. Theodore Roosevelt. All right, so these are some of the responses that I got from you guys when I asked you the question on the first day survey, what is sustainability? I've picked two from every hour, and these are the ones that kind of fit with the largest general trend. So I've got not depleting natural resources, stretching those out as long as possible, the ability to be maintained, stay balanced, keep in good condition, means the ability to make do with the resources we have. It means only take what is necessary. Sustainability means doing what you can to be to lower your footprint on the environment. Basic examples include using less plastic in your life, as well as composting, planting more trees. Sustainability not only encompasses independent support and longevity, but also includes awareness of its global footprint. For example, if there is an issue with factories' waste methods and a solution was found to be cheap, doable, and would work long term, it isn't considered sustainable unless its footprint on the earth has no long-term negative effects. And then lastly, to stay at a certain level. So a lot of these all focus on this idea of reducing the impact on the earth and being able to do it for a long period of time. Um, the whole idea here that you guys are already getting at is finding a way to continue to do something, to sustain it. And that's the core idea here. But there's a little bit more to it than that. We need to frame this in the specific context of environmental science. Okay, so the simple and formal definition of what sustainability is the capacity of the Earth's natural systems that support life and human social systems to survive or adapt to changing environmental conditions indefinitely. So what this is trying to express is this idea that we can be supported by the environment and the environment can continue to function and do all the things that it does for us indefinitely. We're not overstraining or overusing any part of the environment. We have to keep in mind, though, that environmental conditions can and will change. They change both with and without human intervention. So, a great example of this one I will always love, is in 1816, there was a blizzard in Boston on June 1st. Normally, June 1st, we're getting over 100-degree temperatures here in Arizona. That year was incredibly cold. It led to wide-scale flooding across most of Europe. There was famines, and it's actually indirectly responsible for kicking off the modern horror genre with the writing of Frankenstein, when Mary Shelley was trapped indoors with a bunch of people for too long because it was raining so much. It was all caused by a single volcanic eruption on the other side of the globe. Literally in Southeast Asia, there was a volcanic eruption which caused all of these changes to the environment. And it changed a lot of how people and society functioned as a result. So the question is actually, can we adapt with these changes? Because the environment's changing right now. And it's a question, like the Bozeman video said, it's not save our planet, it's not save the earth, it's, can we save ourselves? Um, the goal of a system being sustainable is often equated to living off the interest of an investment. So this idea is that if we want to be sustainable, we can only take what the earth can make for us each year. All right? We can only consume the resources that can be replenished within that usable time frame. We can't be using more than what is available from the current level of production by the earth. And there is a current level of production. So we're going to take a look at that in just a second. Okay, so maybe you're asking yourself, what is the earth producing? All right, so it's very easy to look at a factory and say, oh, it produces widgets. And that's a term that I'll use throughout class to just say a product. All right. So what is the earth producing? Well, we refer to those usually as resources. And when I say the earth, I mean the whole system of the earth, and this includes the inputs. So while the sun is not part of the earth, the energy that we receive from it is part of the earth's system. Okay, so natural resources. I know you guys have heard this term before, and you could probably name a couple already, but quite simply, those are materials provided to us by nature that are useful or essential. I want to break those down, though, into a couple of categories because it is important to understand their role and function based off of how quickly they could be used up or how available they are. So first off, you have inexhaustible resources. And these are resources that will not realistically run out. And a good example of this is the sun. You can put up almost all the solar panels that you want. Functionally, though, it's not going to make the sun shine any less. Now, directly under the solar panels, can that cause shade? Well, yeah, but then again, so can being inside. How about renewable or sustainable resources? Well, those are resources that will replenish themselves, but they'll replenish themselves in a lifetime only if they're properly managed. And a good example of this one is like a dam using hydroelectric power. It's electricity generated by the flow of the river. Can you put too many dams on a river? Well, that's what we did to the Colorado River. Colorado River doesn't even reach the ocean for most of the year. It gets stopped up by a bunch of dams, siphoning that water off, blocking it up, increasing evaporation, all kinds of stuff like that. And this is where sustainable yield comes in. That whole idea of it being sustainable, continuing to be used, living off the interest, that whole idea is you're not overdrawing what the inputs are. And then lastly, you have non-renewable or exhaustible resources. And these only exist in a finite amount and cannot be realistically replaced. And I've got a little picture of an oil derrick right over there. Well, over there, because the mirror thing. Don't question it. Okay, so I've got the little picture of the oil derrick over there. And what that is there for is because, well, the best example of a non-renewable resource is going to be petroleum products. Oil, natural gas, coal, those kind of things. We can't make more of those. We can make biodiesel, but that's not the same thing. We can't make more crude oil. That is produced by deposits of dead organisms from the bottom of the ocean from 350 million years ago. And I don't know about you, but I ain't got 350 million years to wait around to fill up my car again. So we got to find something else. And realistically, yeah, we could run out of available and usable oil. It can be trapped places where we just can't get to it. It can be used up in terms of what we could realistically find. So that is a resource that is finite and exhaustible. And if you've watched the price of gas over your lifetime, you'll notice that it goes up and down. And that's all based off of its availability. I mean, in my own lifetime, I remember when I was in high school and one of my friends said, yeah, but can you imagine if gas costs more than, $1.70 a gallon? I mean, that would be, really expensive to go anywhere. I'd love to find gas for $1.70 a gallon now, but that's my point. All right. So if we're going to be talking about resources and sustainability and how they're used, what we have to talk about is something called natural capital. Now, when I talk about capital, I'm not talking about Washington, D.C. or Phoenix, Arizona as a capital. No, I mean capital as in an asset. A lot of times capital, and we talk about investment and economics, and I know some of you are taking econ, they talk about just money and stuff, but capital is also things that have a value, that are an asset, all right? So in this case, for environmental science, we talk about three major types of capital, and they're the ones that will be kind of looked at for both the IB and AP curriculums. So first off, I want to talk about human capital. Well, on this slide, I've got an example of human capital. This guy. Yeah. So human capital is people with skills, knowledge, talent, those kind of things. If you know how to perform a service, you know how to weld, you know a trade skill, or you have a weird amount of knowledge about how the environment and ecosystems work, guess what? You can be a weird dude like me and be human capital for the school system. Then you have manufactured capital. And these are tools, infrastructure, machines. And for that, I've got a picture of the, over there, of the interstate system. Well, that's probably one of the best examples of public capital in the world. The American interstate system actually is a huge feat of engineering. It took only about 10 years to construct the majority of it, and more goods and services flow across it than almost anything else on the planet. and it's paid for mostly by taxes. And this kind of capital is something that everybody benefits from, but you don't have to go out and fill potholes or things like that. All right. I mean, if you work for a road crew, that might be your job. But fundamentally, in order for you to get to school, you didn't have to pave that road. You just get the benefit of driving on it. Now, your taxes help pay for its upkeep and maintenance, but it's something that is a capital or a resource for all of us. Okay. And then lastly, let's talk about natural capital, and that's natural resources plus ecosystem services. These are things that the earth and the environment does for us without us having to put any real inputs into them, okay? We don't have to do anything to make the sun shine. I mean, it's not like I got to go out there and, light the pilot light each morning, okay? Um, we don't have to do anything to get rivers to flow. We don't have to have a bunch of people out there, with their paddles, pushing the water downstream. These are things that are done for us without us having to put in investment or things like that. And they can have a huge monetary value. It was estimated that the Colorado River, just having water in it and flowing, gives it a value of somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 billion dollars per year because of all that it does in terms of providing water for crops, hydroelectric power, and tourism. People just wanting to go out on the river and float on it or swim in it or fish in it or boat on it or any of those things. That's natural capital. All right, so let's look at that natural capital and talk about what do we mean by natural resources and what do we mean by ecosystem services. Well, over here, I can show you a couple of things. So first off, that picture up in the corner, that's me at a tender young age of 18 years. Yeah, this was right after I graduated from high school. I had the opportunity to go to Brazil, and behind me is part of the largest waterfall system in the world called Foz de Iguaçu. Well, that's actually part of an ecosystem service. That waterfall, that flowing river, that feeds into the Amazon River, which is the largest river system in the world. And we take advantage of that river system. And Brazil takes advantage of that river system for transporting goods and cargo, irrigating cropland, food, because there's some big fish that live in there, and also tourism. I went down there, I spent money to see this, and that is a part of natural capital. So stuff that the ecosystem can do for us for free. Purify water. Well, that fall system is part of the water cycle. All right. The problem is, though, it can be overused. So the picture below it is a Tapu Binacional, which is a binational effort by Brazil and Uruguay to build a massive hydroelectric dam. The problem is this flooded a huge section of rainforest. It displaced a ton of indigenous people. It flooded out native ecosystems. You had a huge amount of carbon dioxide that was released in the first 10 years from anaerobic breakdown of trees and stuff like that were underwater. They basically rotted and released a bunch of carbon dioxide when doing that. All right. So that could maybe be seen as an overuse, but this also provided a lot of cheap electricity for a country that up until that point, most of its inhabitants did not have access to running water, did not have access to electricity, and they did not have reserves of oil, coal, natural gas that they could tap easily to get at that. So it drove that industry and raised the standard of living for everybody. So it helped, but there's also a downside there. So some of the natural resources that we will talk about in this course, and we will dive into them a little bit more, but I want to mention them. You have air. So we all got to breathe, right? But air also transports rain, weather, redistributes heat around the world so that not everywhere is as hot as Arizona and not everywhere is as frozen as the tundra. That's a natural resource, and the ecosystem services that the atmosphere provides is it will actually help remove pollutants on its own. Water. The water cycle moves water around the planet, so you get rain where it's needed. Gravity pulls that downhill, washes nutrients out to sea, provides food for the fishies, which we can eat or take advantage of in other ways. Soil. There's a soil cycle. The breakdown of rocks and the cycling of nutrients in the soil can both decompose things, get rid of our waste products, but also give us a place to grow our food in. And then lastly, life and the biodiversity. And biodiversity is a term that you need to know. It is generally just an expression of the abundance and richness of species or genetics of an area. All right. So biodiversity is also very important because the greater the biodiversity you have in an area, generally speaking, the more life is there, the more types of species, and the more potentially useful things we can have there. Could be food to eat, could be medicine to keep us healthy, could be organisms that help support an ecosystem that keep all these services turning, keep purifying our air, purifying our water, keeping all of that working. So a lot of you guys on our Get to Know You activity where I asked you, would you rather? You said you'd rather kill a panda than be responsible for the death of the last tree. Well, that tree, that's a form of life. That is a ecosystem service. It's a natural resource. That oxygen, that's that right there. All right. So you guys probably know a little bit of this already, but I want to make sure we connect it to what we actually need to know for this class. All right. So the last question we got to ask ourselves is, are we living sustainably? And we're going to keep asking this question throughout the course of the year. We're going to ask ourselves that as we look at some of the things that we do in terms of interaction with the environment and how the environment works. So we have to see, is environmental degradation inevitable? Is there any way that we can live without doing that? We have to ask, are we within the realm of our biocapacity? And that's the Earth's ability for productive ecosystems to regenerate and renew resources that are used by a population. So that could be a group of people in an area, a city, a region, so like the Southwest, a country like the United States, or the whole world. All right. And we also have to question, does everybody have the same level of economic and environmental impact? Is it tied to economics? How does that function? And again, I'm not just talking about us here in Arizona, although I will use Arizona as an example because it's something we can all relate to. So I do want you guys to go ahead and think about these things. I will have more questions for you, and we'll probably have some resources that I'll post down below a little bit later that you guys will be able to see so you can figure out what your level of impact is. All right, that's all for today's video. Take care, guys. I'll see you later.